Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hello, Greg.
Hello, Mimi. How are you?
It's our reunion. I feel
I'd
like
say a reunion makes it seem
been
like
so
it's
long.
been years. It
Well,
hasn't
for
been
us,
years.
it's like in Mimi and Greg time, it's years.
Oh, Mimi and Greg time.
You
We are
know,
our own time. Okay.
we are because when I'm used to talking to you so frequently, and we have a hiatus, it's like
Yeah,
longing
well,
for Greg.
hopefully I'm home for a little while.
Yeah.
So
How were
that
your
is
travels?
they were many and varied.
Yes.
And there were some really spectacular stops along the way.
Yeah.
I had 4 days in Poland, in Łódź, um, which was terrific.
Mm-hmm.
I had a little over 2 weeks in London, or in England, I should say, including going out to the Lakes Comics Festival
Yes.
in Venice. Um, got to see Michael and his bride there. Got to see
Nice.
Mike Perkins. Got to see a lot of really cool, talented, wonderful people from all around the world. Make some new friends there. Spent 6 days in New York, most of them in a hotel room because
Oh.
I tested positive for COVID, so that was fun.
Mm.
Um, and then I came home finally. So
Finally.
it's been a
Finally.
really long time when your Mac, when you open it, is giving you the message of this is the last time you ran a time machine backup,
Oh.
and you're coming up on triple digits. And it's like, yeah, okay, I gotta
I
get home.
thought you were gonna say when you can't remember your password to log in, because I was
Oh
like,
no. No, I can remember my password to get into my computer just fine. Which
sometimes
is,
I'm going, what is this one again? I'm like, wow, this is a good vacation.
I'll
That's
tell
what they
you, I'll
say.
tell you, I'll tell you the one that embarrassingly got me a couple years ago. I was traveling and I was trying to withdraw cash from an ATM, and for the life of me, I couldn't remember my
Your
PIN.
pin.
I just, it was gone. It was just not in my head, and I was doing all of the wrong sequences, and it shut down the card. And I was like, well, that's really embarrassing.
You're
Right?
like, I swear there's money in this account.
And it wasn't even like, it wasn't even an 8-digit, right? It was at that time just a 4-digit PIN.
Yeah.
And I could not for the life of me remember which 4 digits it was, because there are too many fucking pins in my life.
Yeah.
So talk about needless stress. So
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, I actually I realized and remembered that Jen actually joined you for part of the trip, because I did
yeah,
a
she
belated.
came
I
out to
feel
London.
bad. I had a belated birthday email to her, and she's like, actually, I was in London for it, so it was nice.
Yeah.
And it was
She
kind of
actually
a little
wasn't
vacation.
in London for it. She
Oh,
flew
okay.
back on her birthday.
Oh, okay. But it was close.
Yeah, but the birthday present was she and I had almost precisely 20 years after the first time we took a vacation together. We had effectively our second vacation a month. So
Right. I was going to ask you. I was like,
it's been 20 years between the two. So yeah.
All right. Well, it shouldn't be another 20. So
oh God, no.
That's just way too long. Because now the kids are all grown up, so it's not like you're tending to,
yeah, that's spoken like somebody that's spoken like a human who doesn't have children.
Well,
one of them's coming up on 23.
Yes.
One of them is well on her way to 20, and it doesn't matter. Every day is worrying about, and they don't have to do anything. What I meant it's not is because they're asking for it.
You don't have to feed them. I'm like, you can actually leave and come back and know they'll be home.
They can feed
stay
themselves,
home alone, kind of
they
thing.
know they know how to bathe themselves.
I know the worry doesn't end.
And, yeah.
But I meant the vacation thing should be easier
Though,
because they
though I got
like
to
you can
tell
leave
you,
them home.
going anywhere right now again, I don't think Marla's ever going to forgive me.
Oh well, Marlo. I forget. I always forget the Marlo
Yeah,
factor.
no, she is.
Yeah.
Um, so she's been entertaining. She and I are trying to get back into
Mend.
the routine of things. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You got to
Me.
make it up to her.
We're gonna make it all right again. So yeah. So,
Oh my
but
goodness.
no, it was excellent, and I can't recommend. Like LICAF was the festival in the Lakes District,
Okay.
the Lakes International Comics Festival, and it was amazing.
Oh.
Um, it's sort of like I mean the founders and sort of runners make no bones about it, sort of being inspired by Angoulême, and and it has that feel. You are moving around this beautiful little town on one of the larger lakes in the Lake District. I think it's like Windermere, and the venues are around the lake, but you are moving through the community, and it was really it was one of those things where I was like, okay, oh yeah, I could absolutely see doing this annually. This is a beautiful place to go.
Ooh,
And
nice.
then the festival I did in Łódź, and it was my first time in Poland. And the
Yeah.
thing about that, it was very strange. I was only there for 4 days, and um, and everybody I spoke to who wasn't from Łódź was like, "Oh no, this is it's not a great city. You need to see Krakow. You need to see Warsaw." Because this is a young city. It was a designed city from the
Okay.
1800s during their industrial revolution. But I loved it. I
Yeah.
mean, everybody was wonderful. It's a great looking city from what I saw,
Yeah.
really well designed. They are opening a comics and interactive fiction museum that will probably be up in the next year. That is amazing. It's going to be uh, outstanding. And then I had the benefit of my great, my grandmother came from Łódź. So I had, and I expect you've experienced this, when we've talked about your travel, right? Of being like, no, I'm standing in a place that we came from,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like my mom's mom left Poland when she was very young,
Yeah.
moved to Paris en route to New York, via Ellis Island.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting, and travel like that, like you go to England, you go to Rome, you are aware of, or you should be aware of sort of these places, in the world, in the contemporary status. You go to Poland right now, and they're like, "Hi, we live next door to Ukraine, and we are in living memory a
Mhm.
communist country,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yes.
that is still very present in the psyche, and when
Yeah.
you're there talking about comics to a community that in the main had no access until the 90s. And then all of a
Wow.
sudden, here comes Spider-Man and here comes Batman, all of these things, because prior to that, all the comics were put out by the party to promote the party,
Yes. Yes. All
right? So they
propaganda
were,
comics.
yeah, they were James Bond-esque secret agent story
Yeah.
about how to rat out your neighbor, and
Suggestive material.
exactly. Um, it's an
Wow.
interesting, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting mindset, and it's neat to see. And um, when you think about it in those terms, um, there's something really beautiful about being there, and the way all ages are um there is earned pride
Mhm.
at what has been endured and what has been achieved, and invested concern in where they're going.
Yeah. And
Um,
I would find also that there's just a deeper sense of gratitude for where they're at now, right? Like having not had something in your collective memory of like, like if someone comes to you, they were alive in the 90s and maybe before, like not having it, then having it. There's like a kind of a difference than, us
yeah.
Americans who have everything at our disposal all the time.
Well,
Everything's
and
available. And
also,
like there's a real difference in meeting, I think, people who have that type of experience.
and also, I mean, where we stand in history, and this will come out after the midterms, and God only knows. And I mean, God only knows,
Yeah.
because we have had hundreds, literally hundreds of MAGA right wing Trumpist fascist candidates saying literally, if I lose the election, I will not abide by the results. Right. So, I mean, literally, they've already said the election actually doesn't matter unless it gives me what I want. Right. That's where we are.
Yeah.
If you look at that, America, sure, there have been wars. We've had civil unrest. We have had, I guess, what we would refer to as, really in the aggregate, sort of requisite societal pain.
Mm-hmm.
But Poland is the furthest in Eastern Europe I've gone. And when you are in Poland, you are aware, in the same way that when you're in Italy and you're looking at your hotel room, across the street at a building that literally still has these scars from the Second World War on it.
Mm-hmm.
And underneath those scars are ancient Rome.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Poland, and you go, yeah, communism was just the latest, right? Like, I
Right,
mean,
right. That was
like
just
like
the most recent
right, like the
of
20th century wasn't
yeah.
particularly kind.
Yeah.
Um, in that sense,
Yeah.
we have been, and I'm not sure how much of a difference it would make in the collective American psyche, with this country being as big as it is, and as relatively young as it is in
Yeah.
the grand scheme. But the remarkable stability that we have been able to enjoy for so long, I would argue it's we have taken far too much for granted as a result. So
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And of course,
but
we've talked about that
but
before.
we'll have time to talk politics after the election.
Oh, definitely. And
Um,
we'll have a whole episode for it because I feel Rucka rants will be due and ready to go.
look,
It's funny. I,
I'm not casting predictions right now. I'm just so furious at mainstream media
mm,
and the way things are being covered. It's like,
agreed.
you guys
Yeah.
are once again doing their job for them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how we got Trump last time. So
Yeah. Yeah.
look,
It's a dangerous game. It's a dangerous
yeah,
game. But
yeah.
I
I hope
really
everybody, I hope everybody will have voted.
Yes,
That's all
me
I
too.
can say.
That's all we've been pushing for it, right? So that's all we can do. But
Yeah.
I really love the imagery that you painted for me of like you standing there where you have like ancestry and you have connectivity and just kind of having that rooting. And even if it's
Mhm.
just like a moment, right? I'm sure there was a lot more reflection because that's how you are.
Oh
You're
no,
probably,
no.
but like
I'm not terribly introspective. It was a
no,
moment.
I don't think so. I tend to I disagree. I feel like it's not like you have to sit there and like journal all day about it, but I feel like just even having that moment, tasting food in the country of which, right? Like just like
Yeah.
being there and absorbing that culture is really spectacular. Like I love hearing about those moments. It makes me so happy,
Yeah.
and it makes me so happy to hear that you had a positive trip because a lot of times your trips are
That
so
was
work,
yeah.
go, 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 go. And I love that you got to experience and take a moment for yourself, and that you liked cons, first of all. Like, it's been a while since you've
Oh
spoken
yeah,
so
no,
positively
I
about cons. So this is
look,
good. I like this.
as a digression, I like cons.
Right,
I
right, right.
don't like American con.
Okay, got it.
I know I have
Yeah.
real
We
problems
had
with
that
the way.
whole episode on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure we ever did. I'm not sure if it ever made it onto a podcast, but
Yes, yes, we talked
uh,
about the treatment and how differently you're
yeah,
treated
and
at these,
I'm a commodity for Fan Expo and for all of they don't give a rat's ass
yeah.
about me, and they certainly aren't looking to do well by me or to take
Yeah.
care of me. They want me to. I'm an attraction. I'm a Ferris wheel,
Mhm.
and it's like, yeah, you know what? You're gonna treat me like that? Go fuck yourself.
Exactly.
Um, to be a guest at a con, um, I had. She's never gonna hear this. Um, like Polish is a notoriously difficult language to
Yeah, I
to
can't even
speak
imagine.
and to learn, right? And I'm pretty good when I travel internationally. At least I'll get a couple phrases written down that I
Yeah,
can sign in books. And so I had
effort.
one for Poland, just one. Like I managed only one. Um, but because of that, like the show had effectively, she wasn't my handler, she was my guy. Young woman, early 30s, named Alex. Um, and she, she was the person responsible for making sure I got from point A to point B to point
Right.
C to. So I was doing, I did two signings a day and a panel and this and that. And um you do the signings and and again, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, look, they don't get a lot of people from the US doing signings here, right? But the realization after, like, and I had it after the first day. Saturday was the first day of the show. Alex and I were walking back to the hotel, and I sort of had this moment where I was like, and what had happened was we were walking out of the venue, and it was like a mile and a half back to the hotel. And as we're walking out, we go through, there's a pedestrian walkway, and you go sort of underneath the road, and you come up, and there's a big bus stop, and a whole bunch of the con attendees are at the bus stop getting on buses to go, and this is public transport. It's not like these are chartered buses, right?
Okay.
And Alex and I are talking. As why a young woman runs up and says, "Thank you so much for coming," right? And she had, I guess, been in the audience of this talk I had done. And I said, of course, thank you, you're welcome. She goes off, and I see she's with a group of friends, and they're all giggling that she had run over and done this. But I'm thinking, you walk away from that and you go, it is really easy to forget when you are sitting in your basement office for weeks on end, um, talking to people who don't exist in your head and trying to get their actions down on a page and trying to do so in a way that will tell a story that will entertain and hopefully provide more than just amusement.
Mhm.
Um, that when you're doing that, sometimes you are reaching into a life that you just can't even conceive of,
Mhm.
right? I don't know what she had read by me. I don't know what mattered, right? I had three young women in a row at one of these signings, all of them named Kasha, right? and they were friends, right? They were all
The three
laughing about it.
kashas.
The three kashas, which is, I guess, in Poland at least, a shortened sort of nickname for Catherine,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So, it's like a Kate, Katie, and Catherine, right? They're all kashas. And they were so excited that I had used the name Kasha in Wonder Woman with Nicola, right? Like that was a thing.
Of
And
course.
and because when they said, "Can you make it as Kasha?" And I was like, "Yeah." I said, "I love that name. I think it's such a beautiful name." And they said, "Yes, we know. You put it in the book." and and that's I mean, that's tiny. That's popcorn
Yes.
kernel tiny.
Of course.
But
Of course.
there are three young women in Poland who love reading comics, and that was a thing for them. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
it's important. And this goes to something larger and maybe, a little squishy, but I do something that publicly interfaces, like professionally.
oh yes,
The purpose of the work is to share the work. But all of us move through our lives affecting other lives in ways we cannot even imagine, and at distances we cannot even imagine. And the most negative take on that is you didn't wear a mask and you were infected, and you're not wearing a mask and passing the infection on to this person led to them infecting this person, which led to them losing their parents. Right?
Yeah.
Like that is an example of a very negative connotation, right?
Yeah.
But the positives that simply come from, saying thank you and meaning it, or not losing your temper when you're dealing with somebody on the phone, or I mean, as small as, like, this person is clearly in a bigger hurry than I am. Take my place in line. You don't know. You just don't know how that radiates out.
Yes.
How that matters.
Yeah, I love films that do that too, that kind of give you the, the sliding doors thing. Like if you just missed the subway, but this could have happened. And Oscar always takes the positive thing. If I'm like, traffic, he's like, or, this took so long. He's like, yeah, but that's great. It means you didn't get into an accident. You were before the accident or after the accident. Like, that's why we're waiting in traffic, because we weren't in the accident. I'm like, stop being so positive.
So I've talked about this guy, Mark Evans. He's the producer. He was he was boots on the ground producer for Old Guard 2. And he has a phrase that comes out a lot during production, which is most things work out. So most things work out. And that is a great way to live. But at one point I was thinking about it and I was like, you're right. You are absolutely right. Most things do work out. But if the thing that didn't work out was the landing gear locking on approach to the airport, that's a whole different scale of shit not working out. You know what I mean? Like most things do work out. But sometimes the things that don't work out are pretty vital. They needed to,
Yes. Leave it to you to logic into
leave it to me
statement.
I think there is genuine merit in reminding ourselves that most things work out, because the extension of what I am saying is, but you have to pay attention.
Yeah,
you have to pay attention.
And
and pick your battles. So
it's true. And the irony is Oscar's positive, but it's because he says he has no hope. So there's just like this really funny,
right?
Like,
so it's not positivity.
It.
It's nihilism.
Not really positive.
It's nihilism.
Yeah, there
doesn't
you go.
matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, he's like, I'm not disappointed. I won't be disappointed in the election because I have no hope. So I can only therefore be, surprised if it works out, kind of thing. So yeah, I think
Well,
there's a difference there. I see it as like stop being
or
positive, but
having a
really,
plan,
oh yeah.
or something. But
Oh my God. I
Jesus.
love it. I love it. No, but it is nice to hear that you had travels that didn't only, even though there was work involved, that there was moments that
Yeah.
you got to share and that the Jen was there. Like that made me so happy. Like it was so happy.
That was real. It was really special for us. We got to
Yeah.
spend some time together in London. We got to see a play.
Oh,
Um, we got to
which play did you
see
see?
some museums. We saw in its limited run
Uh-huh.
in the West End the Upstart Crow
The
by
Upstart
Ben
Crow.
Elton with David Mitchell as William Shakespeare and Gemma, I forget her last name. It's the
Yeah.
cast from the TV show.
Okay.
Ben Elton is one of the two writers who's responsible for Blackadder, amongst many other things. He is a terrific comic writer. And for Shakespeare's 500th, um, I think the BBC went to him and said, "Hey, do a little like 6 episode Shakespeare comedy." And apparently
Mm.
Elton went whole hog into his research, and you can catch, I think they're on BritBox, but I'm sure you can find them elsewhere. There's a series called Upstart Crow,
Okay.
right? And they're wonderful. They're really funny. And the jokes play in the way that Elton jokes do. There's broad, comedy. There's really great wit. And then if you're a Shakespeare person, there's a whole other layer of Shakespeare humor. So they had been successful enough that I guess Elton um, wrote a stage play
Okay.
that sort of fits in. It uses most of the cast and so on. And in this one, he's riffing off of every single one of the Shakespeare identical twins get separated,
Yeah.
fraternal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Twins get separated. Lear is in the, I mean, it goes on and on.
Ah,
And I
nice.
really like David Mitchell as a humorist. I think he's a
Okay.
funny guy. And him playing his Shakespeare's great. And so yeah, we went and we got to see that. And that was really special because they had initially, I guess, rehearsed it, opened, and then England went into lockdown. So they're like, "Oh, there we
Oh, one of those.
go."
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So then
like
it
the
got to have a
run didn't
revival.
really happen.
Yeah.
So they then came back to do like we've got like I think an 8 or 10 week run we're gonna do. So we
Okay.
managed to get to see them.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love
that
it.
was special.
Yeah, that is
So
special. And I mean, and I know we've talked about this a million times, but I just love the fact that you also got a chance to, like you said, you're like the writer in the castle, in the tower. You don't see people, and all creators kind of share this. This is the thing they like about cons, is like that reminder. There's like, oh, there's
yeah.
humans that are reading our
And
books
you
and they're
get to meet
saying
people.
nice things, and also not just to hear the nice things, but also you just get to meet people and you get to have that like human connectivity, especially the last few years
Yeah.
that we've been missing. So everyone's always said like those are the best part about the cons, right? It's like how the fan interaction is, and that you get to also,
That's the for me,
write
yes.
sign for them, and yeah.
It's the only reason to do a show.
Yeah.
I mean, it's genuinely the only reason to do a show.
Yeah.
And and it can be incredibly rewarding because like I say, it's easy to forget the scope and what you're doing, and to have somebody come up to you and say, I really love this is great. And to
Yeah.
have them come up to you and say, this helped me is one of those things where you go like, oh, I put some good into the world.
Yes. And we
And we
need
don't
that.
get
And we need those
validation.
reminders. Yes.
Yeah, because most of us don't have the opportunity to get that validation,
Yeah.
right? Like we can every day be trying to put good in the world, but what's the metric?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
how
It's
do you
hard to
know?
kind of see how you know. I mean, as if like us sitting here isn't a metric already, and all the things that I do is literally a result of me stalking you because of the work that you do. And like,
Right. Let's not call it stalking.
Basically
Let's,
jumping over a train. That's how I remember it, in order to get to
yeah.
meet my favorite, writer. I was like, oh my gosh, this train is holding me back.
It
And
does.
you can
It
hear
does
the
feel like we
Mimi
can
Greg
never.
origin story next time. There's a podcast on that already for those that missed it.
I'm not. Yeah, it makes me think that we can never go back to San Diego. You know, like you're not going to be able to top that. So
in my mind, I jumped over the train because it felt that way. I was like, it was the slowest train in the whole world. And it was keeping me from meeting you. I'm like, he's waiting for me now, So, but in all seriousness, and I know I say it all the time, but literally, like, you sparked such a huge movement in what I do now with all the activism and Make Us Visible Florida. And I mean, if I didn't read Lazarus, I don't think I would have become active in that way, and then your encouragement of it. Like, I know, and we both, and believe you me, we are all going to be signing off on Twitter very momentarily, though I know you already have, but like, you actually replied to me on that, and I never go on that. And it was just like, it's so encouraging. And it just like, it really meant something. And you have made a huge ripple effect and impact in this world. If you need to be reminded, I will always be here as a reminder.
I am grateful, and I claim no credit for what you do.
I know that.
You know what I mean?
You are a catalyst.
You're the
sir.
one. You're the one who's doing it.
I know.
So
I
am very grateful. I guess I can. The things I will gloriously take credit for is introducing you to a network of other creators that has been very rewarding for you.
Yes, that's true. But you are inspiration. So you're definitely an inspiration. And yes, the network of creators is amazing. Like, I just, did you hear the Bendis episode, by the way?
Yeah. It's funny, we live in the same goddamn town, and he and I just cannot manage to get our schedules to coordinate to see each other. And so I had actually listened to it because I was, aside from the fact that I listened to the podcast,
right? I know,
and that I am curious about, the things that people are saying when you're talking to them. Brian, I miss Brian, so it was like I get to hear Brian, and it's funny. I saw a fraction this weekend for about an hour.
Oh, nice.
But I have to reach out to Brian and be like, okay, are we actually gonna figure out a way to be in the same place at the same time?
Yes.
Part of it is he still lives on that crazy nocturnal schedule of his.
Yes. Yeah. It's amazing.
And I'm now going to bed between 10 and 11 at night and getting up between 5 and 6 in the morning.
So you get call him at 9:30.
Yeah. So he and I are quite literally, like, our window of intersection is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So
yeah, I was really grateful because I was like, all right, realize I'm on the East Coast time for your nocturnal schedule. So it's like 3 extra hours. Like, what's the earliest you can, swing?
You can do it.
He was so kind. But I almost died when he's like, no, I know where I stand amongst your podcast guests, and Greg leaves the country and then you call me. And I was like, no, that's totally not what happened. Like, it was really funny. Like, he was ready with that one. And I was like, man, I just got called
He's
out.
a really funny guy.
So yes, he's very funny. But I thought you would love that. I was like, oh, Greg's ears are burning right now because we're just talking about you like crazy.
Yeah.
So yes, your friends have been so amazing and just like welcomed me. And so yes, that you can take credit for. But all right. Lazarus.
Yes, I noticed. I noticed you had suited up. So
I suited up. I should next time I'm gonna have my sword here. Really, like, get into character. Yeah, next time I'll have my sword here. So I feel so inadequate as a reader because I go into the Discord and I'm like, wow. Oh, wow. I mean, clearly, like, your readers have,
there's
like,
the issue by issue
source, and they're gone through the source book like 8 times, so they know all the details. They remember every back matter ever written, and I'm like, God, fuck, I'm really behind. Like, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, wow, I read that, and okay, I didn't see those things, but yeah, so your fans in there are amazing, and it's fascinating to read. Just fascinating. So it's a lot of fun, but okay, obviously everyone loved Seven. I'm gonna say everyone because I'm just gonna say, yeah, everyone. I mean, down to Spencer Ackerman, who you guys
Okay,
had
well,
this
yeah, but Spencer,
beautiful back and forth between your back matter and then him going, oh yeah, well, Forever
on the
Wars,
newsletter, yeah.
gonna call Greg out. And
I was
it was
supposed to
like
see
the
him when
battle of the writers here of like, how eloquent can we go? I was like, wow, big words.
I was going to try to see him when I was in New York, and it was
Yes,
just
yes.
like, you're not seeing anybody, son. You have COVID.
Yeah. What a bummer.
So
Mm,
he and I will have to make right.
yes, yes.
But yeah, that
But
was,
he saw you in Portland, at
yeah.
least.
No, we
So that
have
was
we have at
nice.
least gotten to meet in person, which was nice.
Yeah, yeah, that's nice.
Um, yeah, Seven was, well. I mean, I
Very well
think Seven was
received.
everything we promised it would be.
Oh yeah, it was like it was gut-wrenching as always. It was intense. The action was amazing, and we did talk about it like pre-release, and we got
Hmm.
like some notes in it. But we open with 8 playing video games, which
Hmm.
she is just has been such a joy. And then like however many episodes ago when you gave me the revelation that every 8 was 8 and not ever a flashback of 7, like
Hmm.
kind of blew my mind, because it's like, was 7 ever that youthful of a kid, or was she
No.
always more somber and like like serious? And because 8 has such a playful personality, like she loves the video games even though it's a cover, but I like the fact that we get to see this side of the Forevers, right? That
Hmm.
there's this like
Well,
playful, even though the
she
weight of
is.
her position is there.
It's so when we talk in terminology, right? Her name is Forever,
Forever.
but her
And
name is Eight,
8, 8,
right?
yes,
She's
yes,
8. And the reason I make that differentiation is they are different people,
yes.
right? I mean, and even undergoing almost identical circumstances in many cases in education, personality is going to take them where they go, right?
Mhm.
um Forever has always been serious. Forever has always been, because Forever came, Forever growing up, a lot of what Lazarus is about abuse.
Mhm.
And eight's the abuse Eight has suffered is a different abuse than the abuse Seven suffered. The abuse that Forever, Seven, suffered, people in abusive relationships answered in different ways. One of the ways she tried to answer it was by pleasing others,
Mhm.
right? I will be what you want me to be. And one of the crucial differences between the two is that Forever was called into action very young. Like at Eight's age, where we have left in the series, Forever had already been in the field for almost 2 years.
Okay. Yeah.
So
So she had to grow up, quote unquote,
exactly,
faster because the responsibility was
it
greater. She
was
wasn't still
literally put right
training.
on
It was
her.
just like, you're up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she went from this is a simulation to this is the real thing. Don't fuck up,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And that 2 year difference is enormous in development,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But it also means that the abuse Eight has suffered, right, has manifested in a different way. And also she's gone through the abuse in um she's gone through a different kind of abuse. And we saw it with Bethany, right? If you go back and you start sort of the Risen arc, Bethany's self-loathing is manifests as a sadism in a way towards 8, until she basically has basically until she has a mirror moment, and is able to articulate to herself about mortality, right? And because Beth's change over the arc, I mean, I guess we're
is
I
part
guess
of
we're
it is
I
it
guess we're
well
a
this is
spoiler
all
zone.
this is all spoilers, yeah.
Yeah.
Is this also because like she knows she might be dying, like that brings about all these questions?
Well,
like, is
she
it a bit
has.
selfish too, right? Like, even though she's
I'm not.
reckoning, and or is it like
I don't think she.
coincidental?
Well, she doesn't know. She Beth has no idea how the arc is going to end.
Right.
What
No, what I meant though, but because they were all like
Well,
losing
she says
their
to James, right? She says to
right.
James, it's not working
It's
anymore.
not working anymore.
And
Yeah.
if it's not working for him, then it's just a matter of time before it doesn't work for
Exactly. Right.
us. And that's not, that doesn't lead to guilt. What it leads to is self-reflection.
Okay.
And self-reflection reveals guilt, reveals, this isn't her going, well, I better shape up or else I won't get into heaven.
Right. But I mean, that's
think
the
she
catalyst
literally,
to make her start down the path of
yeah, I mean, I think
that thought, right?
yeah, I think she literally says to James at one point in the arc, you know, I I want to be somebody I like, and I don't like me. And I do think that mortality, and it's funny. I mean, clearly, like when I am dead and gone, if somebody is really bored and decides they're going to do an overview of the Rucka oeuvre, right? They're going to hit certain periods where they're going to go like, oh, and these are the obvious periods, right? There's always stuff that the writer doesn't know they're writing about, but clearly around the death of my father, I entered into a theme, a mortality phase of writing. All of a sudden, all the characters were characters who couldn't die, right? You get the old guard, you get forever, and all sorts of questions come out when you're playing with that. But one of the things that, and I am not, and I make this really clear, I have made no great discoveries about the nature of life and death. All right. Like anything I found, 100,000 other more talented artists, were able to articulate long before. But I think in large part, what writers do, what storytellers do, is that they, whether they realize it or not, they're telling stories in an attempt to answer certain questions for themselves. So, and I think all of this phase of the writing sort of comes out of me trying to answer, what's the purpose of death? Right? Like, what I know, mechanically why we die and how we die. What is the purpose of a life that ends? And that has appeared thematically, not only in multiple works, it's a shrieking theme in one of the play-by-post games I've been playing for about a decade now. And one of the players in that game doesn't believe there is a purpose to death. And I don't know if that comes from a fear of death, right? Or because, they've built some very persuasive arguments as to why death is unjust. But the thing I keep coming back to, and this is part of it, you see it in the old guard, for everything that Forever and 8 can do, they can die. We know Lazari die. They can be killed. And in the main, right, as it's been presented narratively, well, the other Carlyles can die. They simply don't, right? Because they're never in danger of being exposed to those environments that would do it. If death gives our lives purpose, right? Knowing that it is going to end begs certain questions about what we are doing with our time and what we are going to leave behind when we're done with it. And that's very much what Bethany is confronting, right? Is this thing is back on the table, and this thing being back on the table now makes me look at myself and go, oh, wow, I have been so miserable for so long. I don't remember what it was like to not hate myself. And the moment she gets there is the moment that she can go back to, because Bethany, when she was young, wasn't this. Right? Bethany, when she was young, was probably more like 7. Right? She wanted to make people happy, but she wasn't in an environment where, failure meant punishment at the start.
Yeah.
She's the second oldest. She was around before year X. Jonah and Johanna are born after year X.
I mean, and in Jonah, you see it especially like, well, life is forever. There's no mortality. They just live, frivolously. There's no purpose, right? So it's like existing versus living. And like you see it really clearly through those characters. But I found Bethany's journey very fascinating.
Yeah.
Because you hate Jonah in the beginning, but for different reasons.
Yeah. And you hate Bethany. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's but they're for totally different reasons, Yeah. And
and you hate Johanna.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, Jesus, at the start, you're like,
horrible.
These people are so horrible.
Yes. I'm like, who are we rooting for? Is this the family that we're rooting for? I'm not clear. Okay, forever is yes. We want her to win. Yeah. So but it's fascinating because for sure, Bethany was so key, and that's why I was like, oh man, this is headed somewhere rough, because you're taking us on that Bethany ride, and you could feel it. And of course, there's a lot of questions in the Discord. It's like, well, end scene, like, we see what happens, but James is definitively dead.
She's dead. No, Bethany's dead. Bethany is dead.
And now Forever's pissed.
Bethany is dead. James is dead. Forever saw it.
Oh yeah.
She saw it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to give any spoilers for the next issue.
No, definitely.
When we come back with Fallen, let's just say that in one fell swoop, James just did incredible damage to the Lazarus Project.
Ooh.
Yeah. Literally was like, I'm killing the smartest person here and getting myself killed. So
all right, well, Michael's gotta show up for sure.
Let's just say that whoever is head of family when we come back, it is a problem they have to deal with.
Yeah, for sure. It was really rough to see, because at the same time, it's not like you're rooting for Bethany, but you actually can empathize and feel, okay, there's not that makes things right when you understand why, but at least you can understand something, right? It doesn't justify how. Yeah, you don't justify, right? You don't say, oh, well, it's okay. But at the same time, you're not rooting for her to get killed off, right? So there's like that change. Whereas when you just seen her abuse 8, you're just like, someone need to just stab her. You're just like so angry because you're protective
if we had gone from that to we had gone from that to she gets shot, nobody would have been
nobody would have cared.
Like,
yeah, exactly. Nobody would care. And that's the brilliance of your writing and Michael's detail. And just so much there. I normally don't go down that rabbit hole where I like zoom in, because now that we have the iPads and whatnot, you can, but everyone in the Discord is like, oh, these are the things you look at. And I was curious about the Harvard letter, because like the love letters are just scribbles for the most part. And so there's nothing to see there. But the Harvard letter, I'm like, well, you can kind of make things out. So I'm sitting there looking at it today, like, oh, what? Because, I never got an acceptance letter from Harvard, so I wouldn't know what one of those looks like.
Yeah, I had to do some research.
How standard is that? But to better our world really stood out to me. Especially because later on, Malcolm's huge monologue is how he basically is bettering the world, right?
Yeah, like, it was all Harvard's fault.
It's all Harvard's fault. But it's, he basically goes on about he's the savior because the climate change and world collapse. And then I loved not an extinction event, not the end of a species, not the end of a civilization, but of life. And it's just like, oh, right. But, he it's just like kind of that kickstart of like his beginnings and his quote unquote humble beginnings and all the trials and tribulations he had. But I actually zoomed in on the Harvard letter to try to see stuff this time. And I thought it was interesting because those words were because not everything was legible in the letter. And,
but those were.
But those were.
So Michael, when we're doing things like that, right? I don't, unless I know the text is going to be crucial to the story, I won't include like the contents of a letter or something. Like, you don't need to know what Leia was saying to Malcolm, because anything you can come up with, and Abby's got a line about the photos, right, where she says the sort of things that you send when you're young and in love. Those photographs are photographs that are not meant for anybody but Malcolm to see, is the implication there.
Okay.
Right. And that doesn't mean they're pornographic.
Right. They're just personal.
But certainly boudoir photography level, maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Michael, I remember Michael reached out to me about the Harvard letters, and he said, well, I need text. Can you write me an acceptance letter? And I was like, so I went online and I, did a lot of searching, and I found a lot of really good parody ones.
Oh my God.
And then I found like one or two, and the thing is, and you get different kinds of letters, right? Because some of these letters are form letters, right? That are just going to say, dear, Mimi, congratulations on your acceptance to the class of 20XX, right? We look forward to blah, blah, blah. Other ones very clearly are individual, right? Like Malala did not get a form letter. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That and neither did Malcolm. And neither did Leia, for that matter.
Okay.
And neither did Jacob, at MIT. These were and this is meant, in the confines of the narrative of the world. The truth of the world is these are three remarkable people, right? And there's a hunger and a drive, but there's also, in a capitalist system, a desire to commodify and to control that. And places like Harvard absolutely promote the idea that you come out of Harvard and you are part of the ruling class of the country, right? And that's noble because it is service, right? We will help you to do great things, and you will do them better and better, right? Like the way Facebook made the world better. So
there's about 50 podcasts on that, people, if you want to go back.
So
Yeah.
What I find interesting is, and I haven't gone looking, so I don't know. Malcolm's declaration um, is written to be absolutely correct. Like, he's not saying anything that isn't true, that isn't manifestly in this moment in 2022, 100% true.
Mm-hmm.
He's not making anything up. That's his read on the terrain. And it is a valid read of the terrain.
Mm-hmm.
And his active decision at 16, 17, 18 to be like, I am going to change this. I will fix it. Because nobody else is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
We are at this moment. There's a clock in Manhattan that literally is counting down how many years we have left until the climate is irrevocably fucked. 6 right now, 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yep. 6 years. Nobody's doing shit. And if the economy is the number one factor for voters, well, they're going to be really surprised when there is no economy worth speaking of in 6 years, right? But the media has done a great job of making sure that it's the economy that matters. They've done a terrific job of saying that, and not the
inflation.
Fact that literally the world is ending. Yeah. It is literally ending. Like, every climate report in the last weeks were like, oh God, it's worse than we thought it was. Mm-hmm. There has not been a single report that said, hey, you know what? It's not that bad. They have all said it is worse than we thought and happening faster. Yeah. And I bring you back to our initial conversation, I think, before we went to recording. You guys have had hurricanes before. Never like that. Guess what? They're all going to be like that now. They're all going to be like that now. Right? Yeah. Malcolm is not wrong. Right? Malcolm's wrong is in how he chooses to try to solve it. Right. And presuming that he is in the fiction as smart as he is, and presuming in the fiction that he in that moment is telling the truth, then the method he embarked upon to do it was to him what was required to succeed.
Yeah, necessary. Yeah.
Right. This will do it, which means he discarded another 100, 200, 300. Now, in a world where Elon Musk bought Twitter and then immediately proceeded to do exactly what everybody fucking knew he would do with Twitter, right?
Yep.
A Malcolm Carlisle who says, oh, I have to fuck the rich so hard that I can get them all in the palm of my hand, makes a lot of sense. A world where he goes, I've got to take the Bezos, right, and fill in the list, and I have to get rid of everybody else and compress them down to a manageable number so I can snuff them out. Right?
Yeah.
So you have sort of this weird hyper-capitalist, predatory into feudalism stance.
Yeah.
That is arguably the vector by which Malcolm is hoping to introduce global social. I don't know. I mean, I'm not, or I should say, I do know. I'm not going to say. But
Yeah, I mean, I'm going, oh man, it must have been hard, but not hard for Greg to write this because it's like, well, here's what's happening now. And like I
we
know
had
you feel like we're headed there, and it's
yeah,
it's just
because that's what it was meant to be, right? I mean,
yeah.
it's always meant
Well, it
to
was
be.
meant to be a dystopian future, I thought, but instead it's like life imitating art.
Well, it's a dystopian future if we only ended dystopia, right?
Yeah, yeah.
um, but we're gonna have 12 to 14 issues in which to land this plane, and when we land it, we will see. Look, I mean, if you're expecting rainbows and unicorns in the last issue, you will be sadly disappointed. Um, but I am not gonna go out on. I'm not. I don't care if this is a spoiler. I'm not gonna go out on. It's all pointless. You're screwed.
Right.
I don't believe that personally, and I'm certainly not gonna write it.
Mhm.
Um, we can do hard things,
Yeah.
and we have done hard things, and we will do hard things. The question is, when are we going to come together and do it?
Mhm.
Um,
Uh, I
so
well, I know there's not going to be unicorns and rainbows, and there's never any unicorns and rainbows at the end of any of the issues or the arcs, but there is hope. Which is something we talked about earlier too, and it's interesting because even though you have this way of bringing out a lot of darkness and a lot of turmoil, there is still like we haven't seen a lot of the resistance lately. We haven't seen this,
yeah,
and
I don't.
the thing is, we just don't know. Also, it's like, oh gosh, like this is the time of what we're speaking of in Malcolm's time, right? Like, and it's like, how will though, like 1,000 years from then, look back and like, was Malcolm wrong though
Mhm.
to take those people? Like, you think of Genghis Khan, and it's like he was this horrible human being who like just tore apart, so many countries. But then they're like, well, but here are the things that happened as a result of blah blah blah. Like, it's just
Mhm.
crazy how we can look back at like historical things because we're so far removed. Again, to the
Yeah,
conversation earlier, like we forget so
yeah,
quickly, and it's like, well, but those that had to happen during the war, and those people had to die, and I'm like, but those are still people. So it's just
yeah.
all these questions that don't really have answers, right?
No,
Of like, was he wrong? Like, yes, he was wrong in the way he did it, but like, man,
was
maybe
there
some
was there another way to do it?
was there an
No,
alternative? Yeah, was anyone
no.
else doing it, right? Like, and it's like kind of where we're at now, like you said. So it's just like kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, you look at the Supreme Court, all the stuff that's come out about Thomas,
Oof.
all the stuff that's come out about Clarence Thomas, right? He shouldn't be on the court.
No.
Like in any sane working system, he would have been removed by now.
Yeah.
Um, drastic, drastic times call for drastic measures.
Yeah. Yeah.
I recognize we're wrapping up for the day.
Yes.
But it's going to be real interesting the next time we talk because we're going to see how drastic the time is
Yes.
and what
Yes.
people have done. Um, we should maybe next time because there's a lot to unpack in 7. So I mean,
Yes,
if you
I
want to
know.
throw
We'll
out
do
open
another part 2.
questions
I
or
will.
whatnot,
I will do
so
that because I feel like our Discord friends are much more in depth than I am even, and
I
have all these wonderful like things to ask. So yes, let's do that. Let's do another episode where we throw out some questions. So listeners
cool.
of this, please start writing them down, and then Greg and I will curate
Yes, we will go through
and
them.
have an episode so that we can there's so much to unpack. Like literally I got through like 2 pages with you. So like,
Okay.
and I mean 2 pages of the actual comic, and I had written a few notes, but I was like, oh, how we are. I mean, hence like episode, what are we on now, 51? So like, yeah, so we tend
We're
to
doing okay.
tangent, and we do well. So as always, a pleasure, Greg, and listeners, get those questions to us about Lazarus, and there will be plenty of Greg Rucka in the near future.
Very cool. Take care.
Say hi to everyone.
It's nice to see you again. My love to the family.
Mwah. Okay.
All right. Bye.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/Sifu Mimi Chan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.